hCG Chica. So this discussion is all about how to take an interruption on the hCG diet protocol, and for putting it in terms that make more sense, basically how to take a short break from the diet when necessity demands it. So let's talk first about the rule on when doing an interruption is okay. So according to the original protocol that Dr. Simeons wrote, he said that an interruption wasn't meant to be done until you had done at least 23 injections. So since you take hCG while you're loading, right, for 2 days usually, that means that once you had been on the VLCD, the 500 calorie diet, for 3 weeks or 21 days, after that point, anytime after that, you could take a short break from hCG if you needed it. So he didn't recommend doing an interruption before you'd been on the diet for 3 weeks because he said that when people did that, basically there was weight regain, like regaining weight that you had lost so far happened much easier when you took a break before you had been on it for 3 weeks. Now, the reason behind this is because, remember, this protocol is not just a diet for losing weight, but it's actually kind of like a hormone treatment protocol as well. So part of the idea behind what this diet is accomplishing is it's actually changing how your hypothalamus functions. That's the idea. So he felt that it took about 3 weeks for your hypothalamus to basically to change and to adjust and to heal or whatever, and so that's why he didn't recommend getting off of hCG any sooner than 3 weeks, and that applies whether you're going to take a break or whether you're getting off of it entirely for a while. He recommended that you needed to be on hCG for a full 3 weeks before you got off of it. Otherwise, it was a lot more likely that you would regain weight, even if you were following the rules for phase 3 and all that stuff. So we have that out of the way. Okay, let's talk next about how to actually do an interruption of treatment or to take a short break from hCG. There's basically just 3 things to remember. The first one is that when you're getting off hCG, you're going to do it in exactly the same way that you would do it if you were ending a round. So I have a whole article that talks about how to do that. Basically, it takes 72 hours for the hCG to get out of your system, and during that time, you have to continue eating the 500 calorie diet even though you're not taking hCG anymore. So I have a nifty little table here. I'll put it here. If you're watching the video, I'll put it on the screen. The table will also be in the article that goes with this discussion. But just as an example, if your last dose of hCG is on a Sunday, phase 3 for you will start on Wednesday. So that means that Monday and Tuesday you won't be taking hCG, but you will still be doing the 500 calorie diet, okay? Because remember, the hCG is still leaving your system, and if you start eating fats and increasing your calories during that time, you can actually gain weight pretty quickly. So you still want to follow that rule, that 72 hours of getting off hCG. Before you start your break. Now, remember, you want to factor that into your plans, that period of time. If you're needing to get off of hCG, for like if you're going on a cruise or you're going on a family vacation, plan that in advance. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, I'll stop my hCG injections, on Thursday, and then Friday I leave for my cruise, but actually you still have 72 hours left where you need to be eating the 500 calories. And you don't want that to coincide, with the first 2 days of your cruise, right? So you want to try to factor it in so that when you start phase 3, most likely is when you'll be going off on whatever excursion you're going to, okay? So just keep that in mind. So as far as what you eat while you're on your break, you're supposed to basically eat phase 3 style, so that means no starches, no sugars, basically kind of a low-carb diet. And he instructed that you needed to increase your calories to at least 800. Now, ultimately, you want to use hunger as your guide, so it's not that you'll only be eating 800 calories for the duration of your break from hCG, but he said at least 800. So you want to, again, just use your hunger And so how much you end up eating will vary. It might be 1,000 calories, it might be 1,200. You know, I can't say for sure, but you don't want to be overeating. You want to eat what you need. Now, as you can already see, this doesn't sound exceptionally easy, like an easy thing to do while on a trip or a vacation. We're going to talk in a minute about how I tend to see interruptions actually panning out. But that's the rule there, is that if you need that break, you're still supposed to be fairly strict. It's just that you're going to be eating, you know, 300 to 600 calories more, and you can include things like fats and more protein and stuff like that, okay? So that's the rule on what you would do. Now, as far as finishing a break of hCG, so you're finished with your interruption, he said that if your break was less than 2 weeks long, that you could actually just get right back on hCG without reloading. So if the break was less than 2 weeks or less, you can just get back on your hCG injections and start the 500 calorie diet again, right? You know, right there from day one. If it was more than 2 weeks, then technically you would reload. Now, with this thing here, you know, I'd probably leave it up to you. Like, you know, you just want to think about it. Most people, when they do an interruption, they tend to end up eating more than they probably should, because these interruptions are often taken because of a vacation, and most people overdo it a little on vacations. It's just how it goes. So in truth, I kind of agree that you probably don't need to reload when you're getting back on. Some people choose to, but in general, it doesn't really seem like it's necessary in that case. So that's the basic instructions for that. If you want to read exactly what Dr. Simeons wrote about doing an interruption, it's in his manuscript, Pounds and Inches, which I will put a link to for where you can download it for free in the article that goes with this discussion, and that part specifically is on page 79, okay, just a kind of a long manuscript so you can find it easily. Something that I want to talk about though, and I hope you'll listen to this, is stopping hCG briefly a smart thing to do? So I'm just going to give you a little feedback based on my observations of people who do interruptions. The truth of the matter is, the vast majority of the time, I don't see interruptions panning out. And I think I understand why. Essentially, it's just human nature. There's just like this certain aspect to motivation that really seems to be affected by momentum. And, you know, once you change tracks, it can often feel a lot harder to get going again. And that's honestly what I often see happening with these intermissions and breaks from hCG. You know, you start the diet, you have the momentum, your mind is in it, that's where you're at, right? And you're going for a while. But then when you take this break, you're doing something totally different. You're kind of getting back to comfortable eating again. And then having to switch gears back again so quickly, it just seems like a very difficult thing that not many of us do successfully. Now, I never attempted an interruption myself, but I feel like I probably would have had the same problem. So it's not like an issue with, oh, that person just had bad willpower, or, you know, they weren't strong enough. I think it's honestly an issue that most of us will have. So I'm just mentioning it to, you know, be cautious when you think about doing an interruption. Just because, like I said, it doesn't end up seeming to work out too well. And I'm going to give you some examples of what ends up happening. But again, just as an example of why this makes sense, that it's kind of our human nature. You know, for instance, when I go to CrossFit and, you know, we're in the middle of a workout, I can't stop in the middle of a workout for too long. Like, there's a time frame where it's okay. I can stop for just a little bit to catch my breath and then continue on the workout. But if I actually stop for a few minutes, it's very hard to get going again, to finish the workout. You know, it's kind of just like my body's starting to shift gears already, and it's just so much harder to get back to it. And it's just one of those things, you know, it's something that you can't really ignore, that does happen, and it does affect your ability to do whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So what happens is it's at that point where your motivation has kind of slipped off because your brain and your heart are shifting gears, and so now you're feeling demotivated. And it's at that point that trying to get back to the path that you were on is much harder, and as a result, the chances and the odds of giving up or cheating a lot, all of that go way up at that point. And so it's just being able to do well in that place is just not nearly as likely as, when you started and you were in it and you were just, continuing in that same path. Okay, so I just want to share with you guys basically the typical things that I see that end up happening when people do interruptions. Okay, this is usually what ends up happening. During the interruption, the person doesn't really follow the rules for the interruption, which are, eating phase 3 style, limiting your calories to, between 800 and 1200. And instead they end up kind of eating whatever they want because they're on a cruise or they're on a vacation. And so they just end up kind of throwing caution to the wind and doing whatever. And then there can be a lot of weight regain, during that time, if that's how it goes. The other thing that I see happen is when a person is ready to get back on hCG after an interruption, they might reload even though they don't have to. So again, it's like, they didn't really follow the phase 3 rules and the interruption rules, so they've gained a little weight, and then they reload, so then they're eating more stuff that they probably don't need, so that causes more weight regain, which, you have to get off, right? So that's the other thing that I see happening. And, I kind of think part of what that comes down to is we're so good at deceiving ourselves. I've done it so many times in the past too, where you try to rationalize something that you want to do, telling yourself that you need to do it, and really you end up just creating more heartache for yourself later. But that is something that I see that happens. And then finally, once on hCG again after an interruption, like I said, the motivation is just not the same. So it feels a lot harder than it did prior. And it's at that point that people start frequently cheating. It just becomes a big issue where they're cheating every other day and then trying to get back on track and then cheating and then trying to get back on track. And it's just really demoralizing. Like, it's not a good thing for your self-esteem, to be dealing with that, because you're trying to figure out, like, why am I having such a hard time? Why can't I stick to the diet? Horrible me. And that's really not the case. It's just that things have shifted inside, right? And you're no longer kind of in that place where you're mentally ready to handle it, and you're having trouble getting back to it. And so anyway, that's kind of what I end up seeing happen. I watched a lot of YouTube videos over the last few years, and like I said, I never did attempt an interruption myself, but I over and over would see this type of thing happen. So because of that, I don't tend to recommend them too much, just because of that. And I'm trying to save you guys some grief, because when those things happen, like I said, it's demoralizing. It ends up causing you to have more things to fix. So it's going to take you longer to get to your goal. So just, all around not a fun experience. So you can do an interruption, and I did show you guys how to do it, like what the rules are, how to do it. But let's talk about 3 other options that are different from an interruption. Just another way to look at things. Not something you have to do. I'm just going to throw it out there. But what can you do aside from an interruption? So one choice that you have is really to be cautious in how you time your round. So make sure that when you time a round that there's nothing crazy going on for at least 3 weeks, so that you can get at least a short round in, and then be done with it, and then go on to do whatever plans that you had with your family, or or what have you. But then you'll have a longer break. It won't be an interruption. It'll actually be 6 weeks or 8 weeks of a break, by which time at the end of that you'll be kind of coming around again and gearing up and feeling kind of mentally ready again. for another round, versus if it has only been, 1 or 2 weeks, you very likely won't be mentally ready yet to do that again. Does that make sense? So that's one option that you have. The other thing you can do is if there is something crazy that has to go on, for a day or two during your round, you can attempt to stick to hCG during that time and stick to protocol. In many cases it might be, like just an evening out, like one dinner or something like that. So it's a shorter frame of time, and you may be able to stick to your guns. It may not be easy, but it's probably a lot easier than doing the whole get off hCG thing, have your one free day, get back on hCG. I mean, that can end up taking like 5 days, just to have that one special meal. So that's the other thing you can do is really stick to your guns and try to stick to the protocol, through whatever event is going on. Now, the other thing that you can do if something crazy has to go on and, you're adamant that you want to have your glass of wine and your chocolate cake or tacos or whatever, which, remember, those things are not phase 3 either. But if that is going to go on and you just are adamant that you have to have those things, just stop your round early. There's no shame in doing that, honestly. I don't think. To me, it's much better to just be smart about what you can handle reasonably. And stop around early, and don't commit yourself to getting back on at a certain date, because if you're not mentally and emotionally ready at that date, there's really no point in getting back on hCG. You have to be ready to stick to it once you're on it. So it's better, just stop early, do the thing you wanted to do, and then when you're ready again, you can start a new round. So that's the other option that you have. And the one choice that I hope you won't choose is to stay on hCG and cheat on the crazy days. We've all probably cheated at one time or another on the diet, including myself. But it's not something that you want to plan to do, ideally. The reason it's such a bad idea to cheat on hCG is because, again, hCG is interacting with your other hormones. And the whole idea is that you're actually attempting to balance your other hormone systems in your body, and if you cheat on the diet, you can actually mess them up worse. You can take an imbalance and make it even worse, and that's really something that's not a good thing. If you want to learn more about that, Robin Woodall, she seems to kind of understand more of the science behind that. And so that's why I highly recommend her book to everyone. If you want to kind of get more of the, how's hCG working, with your other hormones. Her book is called Weight Loss Apocalypse, and it's all about the hCG protocol. She's treated thousands of patients, and it's very insightful, and it will help you to see why it's so important not to be cheating on hCG. The last thing that I wanted to talk about in this little discussion is dealing with the but I deserve what's accepted as normal feelings. So these are feelings that I think we all have at one point or another, where we're like, well, I deserve, this is something that, all normal people get to have, so I deserve this, those types of feelings. And I just encourage you guys to weigh this type of stuff out carefully, because I had to really make some major adjustments to my thought process in order to get where I'm at and in order to maintain my weight loss. And part of it had to do with getting rid of my notions of what's normal, or that I should be able to do what I see other people doing. So I understand, that it feels only fair that you should get to have a full meal and a few glasses of wine at your own, 33rd anniversary party. That's what would be considered normal, right? That's something that, I deserve that. That's something I should get to have. And believe me, I have had quite a few pity parties in my day too throughout my weight loss journey. At the same time, if you give yourself a little time to think it through, you may find yourself coming to the decision that nothing is worth impeding the life change that you're trying to make. There's always going to be events, functions, things going on in your life. That's always going to be happening because you have people in your life and you have anniversaries and, you know, just all of these things. That's always going to be there. And the thing is, you know, there will be full meals and glasses of wine in your future. You know, maybe your 34th anniversary, for instance. Could it be that just for this 1 year, for whatever special occasion you're considering, could it be that you could forgo what you might normally indulge in just this one time so that you can reach your goal properly? The reason that I think that this is so important is because I really do believe in the domino effect. You know, one thing can and does lead to another. So, you know, one cheat meal or a few days off of hCG, you know, maybe that seems like not a big deal to some people, but for others of us, it can be kind of like a deal breaker. It can be that thing that just gets us too far off of our little motivation wagon where we can't get back on. So, you know, giving in or letting go during these times could end up being like the start of an unraveling period that later we might decide, after it all is said and done, you know, that we're having a hard time re-raveling or recovering from. We might decide that it wasn't really worth the couple glasses of wine or the full meal or whatever it was, because now we're struggling for, you know, 2 weeks to try to get back on, and we're cheating and all of that stuff. But of course that's only in retrospect, right? Because once it's already happened, then you're in that place, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't worth it, you know. But it would obviously be a lot better if we could make such a choice beforehand to know that it's not worth it, and to make a different choice so that we don't have to go through all that. You know, since I've had the opportunity to observe my own weight loss journey with this diet, and I've been able to observe, you know, a lot of others as well through this journey, I've just seen that sometimes we can end up finding ourselves in this vicious cycle of losing and gaining over and over and over. And sometimes there's perfectly good reasons for it that aren't really our fault, you know. But sometimes it actually is because of some of the decisions that we're making. You know, those times when, you know, doing the normal thing is going to cause a problem for us, but we end up going ahead and doing the normal thing anyway because we want to and we feel like that's what we should be able to do, instead of using an individualized approach. When I originally got off gluten, I had to learn for myself that it wasn't about how I thought things should be, what I should be able to have, but I couldn't. It was really about making a personal choice to have a better, healthier life. And in that framework, there are no should-haves. It really becomes more a matter of, what do I want my life to be like? You know, is it more important to me to retain my ability to do what I see as normal other people doing, or is what matters most having my life be healthy and feeling good doing that, you know? And sometimes you don't see the benefits of that until you've experienced it, so it can be harder at the start to make choices like that. You know, where you kind of feel like you're denying yourself. That can be harder because you haven't reaped the benefits of it yet. But after you do it a little bit and you do start reaping the benefits, it becomes easier and easier because you already know how much better you feel making different choices that are not the norm. And that becomes very valuable to you because that's how you feel best. So yes, you know, I've spent a night or two feeling really sorry for myself that, like, I can never go to a pizza place again and have a regular pizza because of my gluten allergy, you know, like for the rest of my life, you know. And there were nights where I was like, that's just so unfair. But, you know, but then I'd process it over the next day or two, and then I'd come to realize, like, you know, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because, you know, you find alternatives for what you can have, and also you feel better. You're just, when you make the right choices for your body, it's worth it. So anyway, for what that's worth, I hope that helps. I just, again, like I said, I really, one of the main goals of my website is to help you guys go through this diet successfully. It's easy to start this diet. Tons of people start it every day. but they don't get where they want because they don't have the tools and the support to know why something's not working. So that's what I'm trying to do. I observe everything. I observe the trials I went through. I observe the trials that other people are going through. And then I try to share that with you so that you can find ways to avoid that, to logically avoid situations that are going to make this protocol harder for you than it needs to be. So that's it. You can find me on Facebook, hCG Chica, Instagram, hCG Chica. Just, wherever you want to find me, just search hCG Chica. And of course, my blog, hcgchica.com. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys take care. Bye.